When the women were brought into Block 7, they already knew the rumors. There is one order you never resist. Every morning, before roll call, the guards shouted the same command that echoed through the cold hallway like a sentence. Lift your dress higher. No reason, no explanation, no mercy. The order wasn't about checking anything. It wasn't about discipline. It was psychological warfare, a ritual designed to remind them that they owned nothing, not even their dignity. Most of the women obeyed immediately. Some hesitated, but none dared to refuse. The first day, the humiliation cut deeper than the hunger. It was the realization that their captors weren't trying to break their bodies. They were trying to break their minds. One woman, Elena, whispered through clenched teeth, "If they take our dignity, they take everything." But she still lifted her dress, just like everyone else. The morning routine had become a wound that never healed. Every sunrise meant the same hallway, the same cold floor, the same command that hollowed them out from the inside. But on the 12th day, something changed. When the guard shouted the order, the women reacted almost in sync. The fear had trained their muscles better than any drill, all except Anna. Anna didn't move. Her fingers stayed frozen at her sides, gripping nothing. Her breathing quickened, but she refused to lift her dress. It was the smallest rebellion imaginable. Yet in that room, it was an earthquake. The guard stepped forward. His boots echoed like hammers across the wooden floor. The other women stared ahead, afraid even to turn their heads. Anna's voice cracked as she whispered, "Enough." Not loud, not defiant, just tired. The guard didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply stared at her with a cold, practiced expression, the kind that said he'd seen rebellions before and crushed them. The entire line trembled. Elena, standing 2 spaces away, wanted to take Anna's hand, but no one moved. Even compassion had become dangerous. After a long pause, the guard leaned in and murmured something none of them ever forgot. "You don't break the order. You break, or the others break because of you." Anna's breath stopped. Her shoulders sank. Slowly, painfully, she lifted her dress like the others. The room didn't cheer. The guard didn't smile. But the message was carved into all of them. There were 1,000 ways to destroy a person, and this one didn't need violence. That night, the barrack was silent. Not the usual tired silence, but the kind that feels like the air itself is afraid to move. Anna lay on her bunk staring at the ceiling, eyes wide open. No one blamed her, but everyone feared what would happen next. By morning, the guard's boots thundered into the room long before sunrise. Roll call hadn't even begun. He wasn't alone this time. 2 additional soldiers stood at the doorway, rifles lowered but ready. A message without words. The women formed a line shakily, unsure whether the routine would repeat or whether something new was coming. The guard walked down the row slowly, stopping at Anna. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Step forward." Anna's legs trembled. Her friends stared straight ahead as if eye contact alone could doom them. She stepped out of the line. The guard circled her like a wolf testing its prey, looking for fear. But Anna didn't break. Her jaw tightened. Her breathing steadied. That only made it worse. He turned to the rest of the women and spoke coldly. "She hesitated yesterday. You will all pay today." Gasps rippled through the line. Punishment without violence. Pain delivered through guilt. He ordered the women to repeat the morning ritual 3 times, each slower than the last, holding their poses until their bodies shook from strain and shame. Anna closed her eyes. Every second felt like another cut on her consciousness. She whispered, "This is because of me." But Elena, barely holding back tears, breathed back, "No, this is because of them." When it ended, the guard dismissed them without another word, but the message stayed. Resistance wasn't crushed with fists. It was crushed by turning prisoners against themselves. That day, something inside Anna cracked. Not her defiance, but her belief that she could protect the others by enduring the suffering alone. She finally understood. Their power wasn't the order. Their power was the fear of what happened if someone broke it. The next morning, something felt different. The air in Block 7 was heavier than usual, as if even the walls knew another ritual of humiliation was coming. The women lined up automatically, their bodies moving before their minds caught up. Shame had become routine. Fear had become normal. But Anna looked hollow. Not rebellious, not defiant, just emptied. When the guard appeared, the familiar order rolled off his tongue with mechanical certainty. "Lift your dress higher." The line moved, hands tightened, breath quickened. Everyone obeyed, except Anna. She didn't resist this time, she didn't hesitate, she simply moved with the others, but her eyes didn't blink. Her face showed nothing. It was the kind of silence more terrifying than refusal. The guard noticed immediately. His expression shifted. Subtle, but unmistakable. He'd seen strong prisoners before. He'd also seen what happened when strength snapped. Elena, standing beside Anna, whispered fearfully, "Anna, look at me, please." But Anna didn't respond. Her gaze stayed fixed on the wooden floor, empty and distant. The guard stepped closer, testing her reaction. None. Not a flinch, not a tremor. This wasn't resistance. This was detachment. The moment when the mind retreats somewhere else to survive what the body cannot. The guard leaned closer and spoke quietly, almost curious. Now she obeys. But the truth was different. Anna wasn't obeying. Anna simply wasn't there anymore. Her eyes, once bright with defiance, now held the look the older prisoners recognized with dread. The look of someone who had reached the breaking point. Not through violence, but through repeated humiliation so calculated it erased parts of a person. After the inspection, when the women were dismissed, Anna moved like a ghost back to her bunk. Elena sat beside her, voice shaking. "Don't disappear, Anna. Please don't leave us alone here." For the first time in days, Anna turned her head slightly. Her voice was barely a breath. "I didn't break. I just can't feel anything anymore." And that was what terrified the others most, because losing hope was dangerous. But losing emotion meant the prison had taken something deeper, something almost impossible to return. The next morning arrived like every other. Cold, brutal, predictable. But something in the barrack had shifted. The women weren't whispering, they weren't crying, they weren't even trembling. They were watching Anna. She sat on her bunk, staring at the wall, her expression still blank. But something faint, almost invisible, had returned to her eyes. A spark, a breath, a reminder that she was still inside her own body. When the guard stormed in for inspection, his voice cut through the room. "Line up! Move!" The women formed the line as usual, shoulders raised, lungs tight. The command followed. "Lift your dress higher." The line moved. But something remarkable happened. Anna didn't break this time, and she didn't freeze either. She lifted her dress just like the others, but her eyes never left the guard. Not empty, not terrified, not pleading. Just unbroken. The guard paused. He noticed. Everyone noticed. The humiliation ritual depended on fear, on silence, on shame. But Anna had reached a place beyond shame. Not numbness, not collapse, but a quiet refusal to let the humiliation define her. For the first time, the guard looked uncertain. Elena, standing beside her, felt the shift too. She straightened her back ever so slightly. Another woman did the same. Then another. Not a rebellion. Not disobedience. Just a tiny spark of dignity returning to a room where dignity was forbidden. The guard barked the order again, harsher, as if trying to reassert domination. "Higher!" But the fear had changed. It wasn't gone. It never would be. But it no longer controlled them the way it once did. When the ritual finally ended, the guard stormed out without the satisfaction he usually carried. Anna exhaled slowly. Her voice was thin but alive. "They can shame us, but only we decide when we are broken." Elena squeezed her hand gently, and for the first time in weeks, the women of Block 7 didn't feel defeated. Not free, not safe, but no longer owned. Sometimes survival wasn't about fighting. Sometimes it was simply about refusing to let the enemy decide who you were inside. And that morning, in a cold barrack where hope rarely survived sunrise, they took back a piece of themselves. A piece no order could ever take again. The next days passed differently. The guards still shouted. The routine still happened. The humiliation didn't stop. But something inside the women had shifted forever. On the final day of the ritual, the guard entered the barrack expecting fear, that familiar silence of people waiting to be crushed. Instead, he found something else. The line formed quickly, but the atmosphere wasn't the same. No trembling hands, no panicked breaths, no eyes glued to the floor. Anna stood in the middle, not defiant, not rebellious, but calm, fully present. The guard barked the order, "Lift your dress higher." They obeyed. But this time, the silence wasn't fear, it was control. The guard paced down the line, confused. The ritual was meant to break them. Yet now, the humiliation slid off them like water. Their dignity didn't vanish when they obeyed. It lived somewhere deeper, somewhere untouchable. He leaned toward Anna, searching for the old terror he used to see in her eyes, but all he found was clarity, a quiet, steady truth that frightened him far more than resistance. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. He raised his voice, pushing harder. "Higher!" No one flinched. Their movements remained steady, synchronized, almost ritualistic, but no longer submissive. For the first time, the guard realized something terrifying. He could control their bodies, but he no longer controlled their minds. That was the day the order died. Not officially, not publicly, but in the only place that mattered, inside the women themselves. When the inspection ended, he hesitated before leaving, unsettled by a power he couldn't understand. A power he had never expected. Dignity that survived humiliation. Back at their bunks, the women gathered around Anna. Her eyes finally had warmth again. Not fire, not defiance, but life. Elena whispered, "They thought they broke us." Anna nodded softly. "They only taught us what cannot be taken." The women didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate loudly, but in the quiet of Block 7, in that cold barrack with cracked walls and fading hope, they won something no punishment could erase, their humanity. And from that morning on, the ritual never felt the same again. Not because the guards stopped ordering it, but because the women stopped surrendering their souls to it. They had survived the worst of it, together.